Hi everyone and welcome back. If you receive Old Age Security, the Guaranteed Income Supplement or CPP, I need you to stop scrolling for the next few minutes because your July payment from Service Canada is not the same as your June payment, and there are very specific reasons why. Today is July 28th, 2026. Tomorrow, July 29th, is a payment day. And this particular payment day is one of the busiest on the entire government benefits calendar because three separate things are happening at exactly the same time. First, Old Age Security is going up. Second, your Guaranteed Income Supplement, and if you receive it, your allowance or allowance for the survivor is being recalculated using brand new income information. And third, if you're a higher income senior, the OAS recovery tax, what most people call the clawback, has moved to a new threshold for an entirely new 12-month period. If your deposit tomorrow looks different from what you expected, this video is going to walk you through exactly why using only confirmed figures directly from Service Canada. No guessing, no rumors, no made-up numbers. Let's get into it. Part 1, the OAS increase itself. Let's start with the piece that applies to every single OAS recipient in the country. Old Age Security is not a fixed amount that stays the same year after year. It is reviewed 4 times a year in January, April, July, and October, and adjusted based on the Consumer Price Index, which measures the cost of living across Canada. If the cost of living has gone up since the last review, your OAS goes up. If it hasn't moved, your payment stays exactly where it is. This is important. OAS can never go down because of this index. It can only increase or hold steady. For the July to September 2026 quarter, Service Canada has confirmed an increase of 1.2%. Over the full year, from July 2025 to July 2026, that works out to a 2.3% increase in your OAS pension. Practically speaking, here's what that means in dollars. If you are between the ages of 65 and 74, your new maximum monthly OAS pension is now $751.97. If you are 75 or older, your new maximum monthly OAS pension is $827.17. That higher amount for seniors 75 and up isn't new. It goes back to a permanent 10% increase that was introduced for that age group back in July 2022, but the quarterly indexing still applies on top of it, which is why the 75 plus number is meaningfully higher than the 65 to 74 number. Now, I want to be very clear about one thing. These are maximum amounts. Not everyone receives the maximum. Your actual OAS pension depends on how many years you lived in Canada after turning 18. If you lived here the full 40 years required for the maximum pension, you get the full amount. If you lived here for fewer years, say you immigrated to Canada as an adult or spent years living and working abroad, your OAS is prorated. It's calculated as a fraction, the number of years you lived in Canada after age 18 divided by 40. So if you lived in Canada for 30 years after turning 18, you would receive 30 over 40, or 3/4 of the maximum amount. This is a common point of confusion, so if your OAS deposit doesn't match the maximum number you saw in a headline somewhere, this residency calculation is very likely the reason. The new rate takes effect starting with the payment deposited on July 29th, 2026. Your June 26th deposit was still calculated at the old April to June rate. Starting tomorrow, every OAS payment carries the new higher rate until the next scheduled review in October, at which point it could increase again or stay the same depending on inflation data at that time. Part 2. Why this happens automatically. A lot of seniors ask me why they never have to apply for these increases. The answer is that OAS indexing is built into the program itself. Service Canada compares average consumer price index data across recent 3-month windows against the previous period that triggered an adjustment. If the cost of living rose during that window, the increase is applied automatically to every OAS recipient's payment. You don't need to call Service Canada, you don't need to fill out a form, and you don't need to request it. It happens in the background and you simply see the new amount show up in your bank account or on your check. The one thing worth remembering is that this protection only works in one direction. If inflation were to drop sharply, your OAS amount would not decrease, it would simply stay flat until the next period where inflation justified another increase. This is one of the genuinely senior-friendly features of the program, and it's worth understanding so you're not caught off guard wondering whether a future economic downturn could ever reduce your base OAS pension. It cannot. Part 3, the annual GIS, allowance, and allowance for the survivor reset. Now here is the part that trips up far more seniors than the OAS increase itself because it's less well understood and it can move your total deposit up or down by a much bigger amount than 1.2%. The Guaranteed Income Supplement, the allowance, and the allowance for the survivor are all income-tested benefits. That means the amount you receive isn't based on cost of living indexing the way your base OAS pension is, it's based on how much income you reported on your tax return. And every year, on the same July payment date, Service Canada switches which tax year it's using to calculate your benefit. Up until this point, your GIS amount was being calculated using your 2024 income tax return, starting with the July 29th, 2026 payment, and continuing through the benefit year that runs from July 2026 to June 2027. Your GIS, allowance, and allowance for the survivor are now calculated using your 2025 income tax return instead. This one change explains almost every "why did my GIS go up or down" question Service Canada receives every July. If your income was lower in 2025 than it was in 2024, for example, because you retired partway through 2024 and 2025 was your first full year without employment income, or because you stopped taking large RIF withdrawals, or because your CPP or workplace pension income dropped for some reason, your GIS is very likely to increase. In some cases, it can increase by significantly more than the standard 1.2% cost of living bump, because the GIS formula responds directly to the size of the income change, not just to inflation. On the other hand, if your income was higher in 2025 than it was in 2024, maybe you sold an investment, took a larger RRIF withdrawal, went back to part-time work, or had some other one-time income event, your GIS can shrink, even while your base OAS pension is going up at the very same time. This is exactly why some seniors see their total deposit go up this month and others see it go down. Even though everyone's underlying OAS rate increased, it all comes down to what happened with your income in 2025 compared to 2024. There's a critical detail here that I want every single person watching this to hear clearly. This recalculation depends entirely on Service Canada actually having your 2025 tax return on file. If you have not yet filed your 2025 income taxes, Service Canada does not have the information it needs to calculate your correct GIS amount, and your payment can drop significantly, sometimes losing the GIS portion entirely, simply because the return hasn't been filed yet, not because you're no longer eligible. This is one of the single most common and most avoidable mistakes seniors make every single year. If you have not filed your 2025 taxes yet, stop what you're doing after this video and get that return filed, even if you think you owe nothing or have very little income to report. Filing is what keeps your GIS flowing without interruption. Part 4, the OAS recovery tax threshold change. The third piece of this puzzle applies specifically to higher income seniors, and it's the OAS recovery tax, commonly called the clawback. Here's how it works. If your net world income exceeds a certain threshold set by the government, you're required to repay part of your OAS pension. The repayment amount is 15% of every dollar your income sits above that threshold, and it's not something you write a separate check for. Instead, Service Canada deducts it directly from your monthly OAS payments going forward. For the recovery tax period running from July 2025 through June 2026, the threshold was based on 2024 income and set at $90,997. For the new period running from July 2026 through June 2027, the threshold is now based on your 2025 income and has moved up to $93,454. If your 2025 net income was below that amount, none of this applies to you, and you can move on to the next section. But if your 2025 net income was above $93,454, a portion of your OAS pension will now be deducted as recovery tax, spread evenly across your monthly payments for the entire July 2026 to June 2027 period. To give you a sense of scale, if your 2025 net income came in around $100,000, that's roughly $6,546 above the threshold. 15% of that difference works out to just under $982 for the full year, which translates into roughly $82 being deducted from each monthly OAS payment during this benefit year. The exact number depends entirely on your own income, so please don't take that example as your own personal figure. It's simply there to show you how the math works. It's also worth knowing where full clawback occurs. For the July 2026 to June 2027 period, OAS is fully eliminated once net income for 2025 reaches roughly $152,062 for those aged 65 to 74, or roughly $157,923 for those 75 and older. Very few seniors fall into this range, but if you're close to it, this is worth discussing with a tax professional because there are legitimate income planning strategies, like managing how much you withdraw from a RRIF in a given year, or timing certain income sources that can help you stay under the threshold and protect more of your OAS. Part 5. Who exactly is affected by all of this? Let me break this down into simple groups so you know exactly where you stand. If you receive OAS only, and your income is well below the recovery tax threshold, the only thing that changes for you is the straightforward 1.2% increase. Your new amount is either $751.97 or $827.17 depending on your age, adjusted for your years of Canadian residency if you don't qualify for the full amount. If you receive OAS and GIS together, you are affected by both the OAS increase and the GIS recalculation based on your 2025 tax return. Your total deposit could go up by more than 1.2%, stay roughly the same, or even decrease slightly, depending entirely on how your 2025 income compared to your 2024 income. If you receive the allowance because you're between 60 and 64, and your spouse or common law partner receives OAS and GIS, or you receive the allowance for the survivor, the exact same 2025 income-based recalculation applies to you as well. If your 2025 net income was above $93,454, you fall into the recovery tax category, and a portion of your OAS will be deducted each month for the next 12 months, regardless of whether you also receive GIS. And if you have not filed your 2025 tax return yet, you are at risk of seeing your GIS reduced or paused, not because of anything wrong with your eligibility, but simply because Service Canada doesn't have the income information it needs. Part 6, what you should actually do right now. So let's turn this into action. Here's exactly what I'd recommend doing over the next few days. First, if you have not filed your 2025 income tax return, make that your top priority. This is the single biggest factor in whether your GIS continues smoothly. Even a simple low-income return needs to be filed to keep your file current with Service Canada. Second, log into your My Service Canada account, often shortened to MSCA. This is the fastest and most reliable way to see your actual personal payment breakdown rather than relying on general averages like the ones we've talked about today. Your MSCA account will show you your specific OAS amount, your specific GIS amount if applicable, and any recovery tax deduction being applied to your file. Third, while you're logged in, double check that your direct deposit banking information and your mailing address are both current. A surprising number of payment delays every single month come down to outdated banking details or an address that hasn't been updated after a move. Direct deposit is the fastest and most reliable way to receive your payment. Checks by mail can take an additional 5 to 10 business days to arrive after the payment date, so Service Canada specifically asks recipients to wait that long before reaching out about a missing check. Fourth, if your income drops significantly in 2026 due to something like a recent retirement or a reduced pension, and you don't want to wait for next year's tax cycle to reflect that in your GIS, you have the option to contact Service Canada directly and request an estimated recalculation based on your current lower income. This isn't automatic. You have to reach out and ask for it, but it can meaningfully speed up an increase you're otherwise entitled to. Fifth, if you experienced a major life change in the past year, a marriage, a common law relationship, a separation, or the loss of a spouse, report that to Service Canada as soon as possible. GIS calculations for couples are based on combined household income, so a change in your marital status can significantly affect your payment, and not reporting it promptly can delay you from receiving a higher single rate payment that you may be entitled to. Sixth, if your 2025 income was near or above that $93,454 threshold, this is a good time to sit down with a tax professional or financial advisor and look at your income sources for the current year. Simple things like adjusting how much you withdraw from a RIF or being thoughtful about the timing of one-time income events can make a real difference in how much recovery tax you pay over the next 12 months. Part 7. A few common questions. Let me quickly address a few things I know people are wondering. Is this a new benefit or a new program? No. This is the regular scheduled quarterly OAS adjustment and the standard annual GIS income year switch that happens every single July. There's nothing new being announced here. What's new is simply the confirmed numbers for this particular cycle. Do I need to apply for the OAS increase? No. It's applied automatically to everyone already receiving OAS. Do I need to apply for the GIS recalculation? Also no, as long as you filed your tax return. Service Canada uses your tax information automatically to update your benefit. Will my payment date change? No. Payment dates are fixed by Service Canada's annual calendar and don't shift based on amount changes. July 29th remains the scheduled date this month. What if my payment still doesn't match what I expected after checking all of this? Contact Service Canada directly. Their general inquiries line for OAS and GIS is 1-800-277-9914. Have your social insurance number ready, and if possible, check your MSCA account before calling so you can ask specific, informed questions rather than general ones. Wrapping up. So to summarize everything we covered today, old age security increased by 1.2% for the July to September 2026 quarter, bringing the maximum monthly amount to $751.97 for those 65 to 74 and $827.17 for those 75 and older. At the very same time, GIS, the allowance, and the allowance for the survivor switched over to being calculated using your 2025 tax return instead of your 2024 return, which means your total deposit could move up or down depending on how your income changed year over year. And for higher income seniors, The OAS recovery tax threshold for the new July 2026 to June 2027 period moved up to $93,454, with full clawback occurring around $152,062 or $157. $923 depending on your age. All three of these changes hit on the same payment date, which is exactly why so many seniors are confused when they see a different number in their account this month. Now you know exactly why and exactly what to check. If this video helped clear things up, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this information reach more seniors who need it. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss next month's payment breakdown, because these numbers shift again in October. And if you have a specific situation you're not sure about, drop a comment below and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Stay informed, check your MSCA account, keep your tax returns filed and up to date, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.